Bonjour. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. I'm going to greet you in my language to start. So, Bonjour, Niigaanwewidam, Anishinaabe and Dao, Niigaanwewidam, Indigenous, Namagoshin Dodem, Niigaanwewidam, Omayayan. That's my favorite phrase in Anishinaabe, Moen, which is Niigaanwewidam, Omayayan. I told you a little bit about myself, a little bit about my clan, a little bit about where I come from, a little bit who I am. But Niigaanwewidam Omayayan is my favorite phrase out of everything. Because what it means is, it means everything that has happened to lead me to this place, I am very happy about. Niigaanwewidam Omayayan. Think about all the things that have happened in your life, the millions of things that have happened. You could have turned right and turned left, all your ancestors and all the things that might have happened there. Think about all the experiences that you've had, that your ancestors have had, that the earth has had, that the water has had to lead you to this time. And you can understand the profundity of that statement, Niigaanwewidam Omayayan. That, if you understand that, that is everything you need to know about my topic for today, which is, what does an Indigenous university look like? Now, I come from the Anishinaabe people, or also known as the Ojibwe, or the Soto, or the Bungi. But we are a people, or the Chippewa, we are a people spread throughout the Great Lakes. We're one of the largest nations in North America. We've been here for a very long time. We were formerly part of the Abenaki Confederacy, but we broke away a long time ago. And if you just add in that time period alone, we've been a civilization for thousands of years. We've learned a lot. We know a lot. We've thought a lot. We've written about it. We've sang about it. We've shared it with everybody around us. The Anishinaabe have had an intellectual and scholarly tradition for thousands of years. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that today and propose that that might be what an Indigenous university looks like. But of course, it's not to deny that there are many, many other nations that we could talk about. We could talk about the Cree University. We could talk about a Haudenosaunee University. But I'm here today to talk about an Anishinaabe University. We live today in the age of reconciliation. And it's a very popular buzzword. You're going to hear it everywhere. We come now emerging from a residential school legacy, hopefully emerging from an Indian Act legacy that's been very violent, involving and separating Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in this country. In many ways, as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has pointed out, it is education, the separation of education, that has got us in this mess. The teaching not only of young Indigenous people that they were savage and inferior, but of Canadian children that Indigenous children were savage and inferior. And in many ways, education will be the venue to lead us out of this mess. And that might be why an Indigenous university, considering that idea, might be fruitful. Now, to define a university for a moment, now I'm a department head, meaning I have to handle about this much pile of paper every day. But to define a university, you have to think of what are the three things that make it up. There's the research, which is the creation of knowledge and the dissemination of knowledge, the sharing of knowledge. And then the teaching of that knowledge to students, many of you that are here. And then finally, service, or what's community building, how a university acts in a community. What that might look like, what that might feel like, what that might be imagined to be like is what I'm about to tell you about. But we have to begin, as we do in most Anishinaabe tradition, with a story. Now, this is what I'm heading into. This is what I'm showing you. And you can see, as I'm going to argue, that these things fit within it. And so our story starts with what might we consider to be research. Now, for the Anishinaabe, everything begins with nothing. Crazy, eh? For the Anishinaabe, everything begins with nothing, or a time period when nothing was nothing. But yet nothing was something, because something was a being. And that being was called Niigaanwewidam, the first great mystery. Niigaanwewidam meaning vast, Manitoba meaning spirit or essence, the great mystery or essence. And so that first being, at a time before time, heard a sound, and that sound looked like this. And if you look, you can see that tiny little thing, just like this. Very tiny little thing. And that sound kind of sounded like two stones coming together. You can make that sound. You can make that sound actually with your knuckles. You can hear that. That sound that began all things. Now, when Niigaanwewidam looked into that sound, She saw for the first time the most beautiful thing she ever saw in her entire life. You know what that was? Well, it was you. She saw you in March 2016 right here at the University of Manitoba. But she didn't just see you now. She saw you now. She saw you now. She didn't see you now, but she saw you now. And now, and now, and now. She saw you in all of your infinite connections, as a constantly mobile, creating being that is always moving throughout space and time. In all of your complexities, the good and the bad, everything with what you were and are and can be, she saw you. And so TEDxUManitoba saw you right now sitting there watching this. And TEDxUManitoba said, what an amazing sight. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And we all know that when you receive a gift might be a cup of coffee, a gift might be a beautiful Xbox, or a gift might be that ugly sweater from your grandmother. A gift is only valuable insofar that you use it. And so TEDxUManitoba realized this incredible gift was a responsibility. And so she used it. She decided to make the beautiful, beautiful image that she saw of you. But she had to do everything in preparation for you. She had to make the sun and the moon and the stars and the sky and the wind and the directions and the plants and the earth and the animals and the fish, make everything to prepare for you. Until finally one day she decided to make humankind. And all of those things had to be brought together in order to prepare the world to make you. Things had to be brought together to make the possibility of you. And soon enough, this beautiful creation began to come together. Things came together, and every piece of creation had a gift called a bundle. And within that bundle, whether it be the sun with the heat and the movement across the sky, or whether it be the moon with the gravity and the ability to control things throughout the world, whether it be the directions in the wind, whether it be animals or the plants, whether it be human beings themselves, which were given the powerful gift of dreaming. The powerful gift of dreaming. To create the most amazing things you can see in your head, but also to create the amazing things you can see in your head. The good and the bad of that vision, of that gift. Every being began to create things together, and movement began to happen. Everything began to move and shift and change until finally creation looked like this. This is how creation looked. And this is what the Anishinaabe have been studying and writing about and singing about and thinking about for thousands of years, how things come together to create something else. The most beautiful, amazing, stupendous, mind-blowing thing. And it's evidenced right here in that room with you and you and you. Now, what we call this is called Peguis, or a gift. These gifts, these sharings of gifts between individuals that create more gifts, are the gifts of relationship, the gifts of connection between things. And they're embodied in all of our practices. I'm going to use a drum here as just an example. But if you were to think, for example, how a bear, a fish, water, and algae come together to create a network of gift giving, but that a set of gifts that we might call life, or what we refer to as Minobamadzuin. You can begin to understand how studying those things, spending time at that water, spending time in that territory, watching those bears with those fish in the water, with the fish in that algae, all of those intricate connections we might also call biology. We might also call them the string of life, the chain of life. We write about it in this very walls of this institution here. But for us, we refer to these terms as Niigaanwewidam and Wawayak. Niigaanwewidam comes from the word wende, which means things are related. And Wawayak, it means that everything is in a system. Everything is connected and everything has a place. And that, my relatives, is Indigenous research. Indigenous research is an analyzing, examining, publishing the information that all things are connected, and these are how they are connected. How do we share that information? Because in fact, we do that in many ways in this place, in this university. We do it quite well. Well, Indigenous peoples for tens of thousands of years studied the world of North America. They studied also the worlds all throughout the world. They traveled in boats. They moved, they traveled, they traded. How did they trade and share that information? Well, we have to ask the central questions is, what is knowledge? What is learning? How do we share knowledge? Who can help us understand knowledge? And how do we teach that knowledge at the end? Well, my question to you right now is, how do we do that here? How do we do that in a place called a university? Well, the library is the institutional center of power for any university. It's the place where knowledge is rewarded, recognized, and disseminated. If you walk in a library, that is the place. It is the apex of power. It is what makes knowledge and defines it. But if you ask my students now, where would you go for knowledge? They probably wouldn't go to this place. They'd go to Google, right? And that might be an ongoing trend to think about of what that really means for universities. But if we said this are the apexes of knowledge, the centers of knowledge, these places right here, well, for Indigenous people, these are not the libraries where knowledge is found. Because these are the places where knowledge is found, is published, is disseminated. And ultimately, these are the places in which Indigenous universities will be found. They will be built, and they continue to live on as they have been for thousands of years. For the Anishinaabe, it involved the Great Lakes for us. It involved the trees. It involved the peoples. It involved the non-human beings as well, in a constant array of publication, research, and teaching. And ultimately, the creation of a network of community that is ongoing yet today. Now, I want to show you one university that I go to 4 times a year as a part of my life, but that these things are written down. And I just want to emphasize this one point. If there's nothing I do in my career, is that I emphasize this one point, is that this stereotype of Indigenous peoples as oral peoples, as only oral peoples, is a false one. It's an anthropological construction. In fact, we are the oldest literacies of the Americas. Everything I'm about to tell you has been written down. It's been written on earth, on rock, on birch bark, on hide. These things have been written even in tattoos, in beadwork. This is an Anishinaabe university. This is a Medewan Lodge, and we spend days building it. When we are preparing our young people, even our older people, for teaching, we have to build that lodge. And the way that we build that lodge is we take the materials around us and we connect them together by studying their nature, by studying the ways in which they interact with the world around them, and then we bring that teaching together with the people. And the only rule is to participate within this ceremony. You have to participate in the building of it. You have to participate in the making of this university. And can you imagine what that would look like if every season students came and we built the university? We looked at the world around us and we built it. Well, we do it every year. We do it every year, and then we make life. We make connection. We study things. We study things with songs and with stories, with literature, with research, and then we publish it amongst the people. And we publish it on items like drums in birch bark. And then we create a community. This leads me to the last part. And universities do a really good job with service sometimes. I mean, they go out there and they help big projects being developed like dams and resource projects and things like that. And we publish books and we publish a whole bunch of other stuff. Well, I want to talk about how an Indigenous university, by studying Indigenous knowledge, the thousands of years of history that have existed in North America, how that might help our community. This is a map that was made in 1807 by a Cree leader called Peguis. And a map maker turned to a Cree leader in northern Manitoba and said, "Hey, tell me how you get home. I know we're standing here in the Paw, or Opaskwayak Cree Nation, the Paw. How do you get home from Split Lake?" You can see Split Lake at the top of your image right there. You've got the Paw at the bottom. Well, what Peguis said was that, hey, I could travel this direction, I could travel this direction, I could travel this direction. But whatever way I travel, I'm going to meet these people. I'm going to experience this waterways. I'm going to go on these lakes. I'm going to experience this current. I could even turn, if you look just to the right there, you could even turn and go into Lake Winnipeg. These are all the beings I'm going to meet along the way. These are all the experiences I'm going to have. Here are all the stories. That's what Peguis wrote on this map. Now zoom ahead. In Manitoba, we have this affinity of building dams in Lake Winnipeg. And unfortunately, due to our dam production by lots of entities and the control of the lake by provincial forces, we have now created the most polluted lake in North America, Lake Winnipeg. Many of you can't swim there anymore. The fish, the algae production is overproduced, mostly because of things we put into the soil like sewage and fertilizer, even shampoo on our heads. And our lake is the most polluted lake in North America. The fish are dying. We are literally killing ourselves. Much of this is due to dams that have plugged up the river and created a trickle effect where the water all sits into Lake Winnipeg. And they asked me in an assessment, after having all these academics come by and say, here's a dam that wants to be created. You can see it's the Kiosk generating station, which is now under development and being built. Is Manitoba Hydro held surveys and said, well, what will this affect the lives of people here in Manitoba? I said, yeah, absolutely. And it's been written down for a few hundred years already. Peguis, using his knowledge of the river system, of familial networks, of community, of the northern Manitoba landscape, scientific, literary, physiological, geographical, he wrote about it over 2 centuries ago. All you have to do is see the knowledge that's there. And that, my relatives, is service. By making the world better around us, it is what as an Indigenous university has always been about. Because an Indigenous university is always embedded in the gift givers around us, embedded in looking at the fish and the bear, but also our human and non-human relations all throughout creation, saying, what do you have to give to us? What can we give back to you? And ultimately, how can we create a society where life begats life? What we refer to as Manitoba Madzawin, or the good life for all. So, what does an Indigenous university look like? Well, we could say it looks like this. Here's research. Here's teaching. And here's service. Because an Indigenous university is for everyone. It's not for Indigenous peoples or non-Indigenous peoples to gain whatever we might think of as reconciliation. It's a place of dialogue, it's a place of community, and it's a responsibility for all of us. If we are to ever embody what reconciliation actually looks like, it begins by learning first about what each other's research, teaching, and service is all about, and who we really are as a collective community. Miigwech.